It's Future Perfect Book Club. We are reading Careless People by Sarah Wynn Williams. I'm Joel Goodman.
And I'm Ron Bronson.
We're in person.
Wild times. Shout out to producer Jess, also here with us.
Producer Jess is on, as she said, the ones and twos, which is something completely different, but happy to have her sitting next to us, making sure we talk about the right things. Careless People, the story of where I used to work by Sarah Wynn Williams, has been making its rounds, I feel like. It was explosive and sort of, we'll talk about it, but there was a lot of chatter in the social media and news sphere because this is essentially Sarah Wynn Williams' memoir about her time working at Facebook before it was Meta and maybe a little bit after it was Meta. And I think the main thing Ron and I learned is that when we're doing a book like this, specifically a memoir, we need to make sure that we don't just talk about the memoir. We need to talk about the ideas it brings up because, I don't know, I feel bad commenting on someone's life and actual shared experience, but I don't feel bad commenting on the societal issues that come up through something like this. So I guess let's start it where we always start it. What did you think of the book, Ron?
This is mostly for you do reality TV and you're trying to create drama. So I just want to say this for the record. This is mostly about, you don't know us. So you hear it and you think, I didn't want to read this book.
Yeah.
But it's hot in the streets. So we got to do what the people need. So we read this book, had to buy the stupid book from this Facebook person who took no accountability or anything in this book at all. She's kind of like, yeah, I thought it'd be cool. It wasn't cool.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a memoir. I see your point. It's a memoir. You can't like a memoir or hate a memoir, right? It's your life. You told your story. It's hard to be vulnerable. Sure, you got a really big advance and your book's a bestseller. You already rich.
And a little bit of a payout.
I mean, you were already rich. But you know what? It's hard to write a book and it's hard to tell your story. So you know what? Shout out to you for telling your story. Did I like your story? No. I think it was interesting tidbits in here, but the things that I found interesting were the random anecdotes of we were in Brazil and Hillary Clinton was at the club with us.
Yeah, right.
I enjoyed stuff like that because I just enjoy matter of how regular people live regular lives.
You want that BTS content, Ron? You sign the scenes.
That's my favorite thing. And so I'm just oh, really? You were out the club. Your coworker was definitely coming on to you. And also Hillary Clinton was at the club with y'all turning up. Yeah, give me that. A whole book of that would have been great. But
yeah, I agree. The memoir thing, was it written well? Mostly, I thought there were parts that were engaging. I thought there were parts that were not engaging. But I agree with you, Ron. I think the hard part with this is that I think it just reinforced for me that there shouldn't be anyone with idealism as a central tenet of how they approach the world in tech or in these positions of power. Because so I think the big problem is that people that kind of base their entire understanding of the world or approach the world with this idealistic mindset aren't really cut out for the cutthroat, evil, terrible place. And I don't want to say that those people are stupid. I think they're kind of maybe a little gullible. I understand at the beginning. So the start of her story, right? She's talking about how from New Zealand, she's coming out of work for New Zealand at the UN. She's tired of things not happening and working on things that seem inconsequential and wants to do something consequential. So I understand that starry-eyed sort of stuff. That's how you get into these positions of wanting to apply to a place like Facebook or a Google or, whatever. The part that is frustrating to me is, as you said, the lack of accountability. There are so many spots in this story where she says, yeah, this bad stuff was happening. I learned this bad stuff. But I shrugged it off. I figured, well, maybe you can't let the idealism get in the way. It just ends up compromising whatever ethics and morality you thought you had anyway. And I don't know how you come back from that. You're complicit at that point, right?
She had been in government. So I'm people like that, especially, you're in high powered in the government of any country. You just learn stuff, right? You become a level of cynicism that it's hard for us to conceptualize what we do, right? Because it's just such a different, having only had a small, tiny glimpse of life into what that world is like for those people. I find that fascinating. So I can only imagine you become detached to a certain level from real stuff. You know, they joke about presidents going to the grocery store. When's the last time they shopped for themselves or drove for themselves, right? Like they don't, because you just get so divorced. You think you're normal, but you just get so divorced from normal stuff. And so like, I'm not willing to give her a pass, but I understand that for her, right? Like she's already rich. She had done what she wanted to do. You know, you think you can change it, right? I can change her. Baby, you're not changing Facebook. Like, you know, this was evil from the start. And it's like, I have friends who worked at Facebook. Like, we have friends that work at Facebook. I'm just saying about like people making moral judgments on what people choose to do. Like, we're all complicit living in this kind of system. Oh shit, it's a communist podcast. But like, no, Marxist, it's not. Chill out. Don't tell your friends. But I just think that, especially at the time she joined Meta, right? Or Facebook at the time, I guess. Certainly, you would have had some understanding. Like, hey, I understand these guys are, you know, that this place is yada yada, but I wanted to do this because I thought, what a cool opportunity for me to blah blah blah. And I just feel like she talked about that a little bit, but I didn't get. I said, never got a sense, even at the beginning or at the end, of like, maybe I should have thought about that, or here's what I wanted to do instead, or here's what I learned from that. It just felt very like detached from the experience. Everything happened to her.
Yeah.
She was part of it. And I just, you know, and I read a lot of the critique about this book from people who had worked there with her, who said at times she put herself in situations that weren't really about her, right? She made herself the center of a narrative that she was only a part of the narrative. And I could get that from the book, that I'm like, that makes sense. And again, she didn't own stuff that she was a part of. And that was part that bugged me the most. As someone, obviously, if you read these things, a lot of the stuff we're aware of, a lot of these stories we knew about, you know, going on in Myanmar and so forth. These are things that were well reported. And I just feel like she didn't take any ownership over any of it. I was just doing what they told me to do.
I think that's probably all we should say on the memoir side of it. I don't want to really get into tearing apart the author too much, but I do want to talk about some of the serious topics that I think were brought up, regardless of who was at fault for them happening. And there's quite a few things that come to light here. I think, we mentioned kind of that idealism versus reality thing, and the fact that tech companies do oftentimes, and not just tech companies, big corporations in general. I mean, government was this way and was actually very good. It was a very good thing for quite a while until recently. But this idea that people that want to have a big impact and change the world get attracted to these places that have lots of money and lots of power and lots of influence over people, over society, over the different means and methods we use to connect with each other or communicate. And there's no denying that Facebook and Meta are hugely important in the modern history of the world,
Can't tell the story without it, especially at this point.
Right. And the problem is that it's not good. It's the hindsight question. It's looking at it saying, oh, we could, but should we have done it, And I think that happens with a lot of people, especially people that come into these companies very young and think, oh, we're a part of it. And like when Facebook was a startup, they get together and it's like a band of pirates and we're, it's punk rock and whatever. But eventually that just becomes window dressing and talking points from an earlier time. It's no longer this change the world ethos that powers what you're doing. It's as much money as possible, as much power as possible at whatever cost. And that cost today, especially for large corporations, is mostly people. The cost is ruining lives. And some of the things that I think were interesting is just how it ends up being sort of like a kind of slave labor in in some senses. There are people that made obscene amounts of money and other people that still made good amounts of money comparative to other industries. But also people that really weren't making that much and were having to do a ton of work, especially their international employees, for some of the terrible jobs like content moderation and things like that. And it's purposeful. It's similar to what we talked about with Spotify. It's similar to what we've talked about with Cyberboss. These things are done on purpose to make sure the company is the thing that makes money. And that's something I've been wrestling with the last week as an entrepreneur. I saw recently an extremely talented developer that's done a ton for pushing the CSS standard forward was laid off from Google without warning. And the outpouring of people going and supporting this person saying, oh man, I'm so sorry. You'll be fine, but wow, it's terrible. And I mean, they're shook up about it, but I mean, right. And I think the same happened recently in a lot of the layoffs across the US government and continues to happen. As an entrepreneur, I struggle with this. There's this side of I like being an entrepreneur because I can I don't have to go through that sort of stuff, but I have all kinds of other struggles to go on top of it. And then, man, sometimes it'd just be nice to take a job and just take the payout and be completely jaded and only care about myself and my longevity. And I look at that and I wonder, like, from the viewpoint of someone that's coming into these positions with an idealistic mindset, how do they reconcile that when they end up realizing that they're disposable, they're just there to be used and gotten rid of, and that they, as a person, as a professional, as someone that knows things, aren't actually valued because it's the corporation that they're working for. They're not working for themselves or the world. Or
yeah, I have two thoughts. I appreciate that deep dive into, it's just bringing more in the existential sort of philosophical thoughts about work broadly and the jobs we have and, meaning, and especially in this world where, again, people are just faceless. I may know a lot about the government and layoffs, but, illegal as they may be. But, I'm thinking a lot about, for the folks listening to this who are familiar with the history of Bell Labs in the 70s and how ubiquitous they were at that time. I mean, a lot of that came from, much like Silicon Valley, came from lots of government investment in technology and things like that. We reflect on that era and the transformative nature of the work that, there was a lot of toxic stuff going on in those companies too, the old IBM. But I do not feel we're going to look back on this era. We already don't, but we're not going to look back on this era of, the Web 2.0, the platform era, with any of the same reverence or happiness that you have of the stuff from the past, because how destructive it's been, right? Bell Labs as far as I know, Bell Labs wasn't involved in any coups.
Not overtly.
Certainly not overtly, right? Maybe surreptitiously. Maybe they provided the phone lines for the coup, but I don't know that they were involved in being like, hey guys, there's a thing going on here, la, la, la. I don't think that was happening. So I just think about that a lot, again, in the reflection of all this stuff, because it's really it to me. We really are at a crossroads with, going from the platform era to the platform era with AI, right?
Yeah.
Gross. Yeah. And we're going to look back on the sheer innocence of social media and being like, man, it used to be so simple around here.
Right.
All I can think about all the time, literally, is in the movie version of The Minority Report, how Tom Cruise is walking through the mall and being fed ads, personalized ads on screens in real time. Everyone talks about Her these days, and like the movie Her, and, the chatbot that decides to leave you to go be the chatbots because it's sentient now. And just thinking about how it didn't take us very long to literally, create this simulated world that we have to reckon with, and how platforms are part of that. You might be wondering, well, what that have to do with the book? And I think if we're going to talk about Meta, talk Facebook, talk about, again, any of the platforms that have evolved during that time in the last, sort of early to early 2000s, maybe in the mid 20s, sort of early 10s, to think about where that leaves us, where it leaves us now, our own usage of mediating these tools. We don't have an Instagram account for this podcast because Joel hates Instagram. I also hate Instagram, but we don't want to support a platform in that way. It doesn't really serve our needs or our aims. Maybe get mildly more exposure, but it's not really worth, there's one small thing we decided to do intentionally.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that maybe this is a little bit of my idealism coming through, but I think that if we're going to wrestle with these big issues that face our everyday, whether it's the platforming side of it, whether it's algorithmic control of everything else that we're doing, I think the least we could do is put our money where our mouth is, actually literally go somewhere else and not support those platforms. And it's hard. And it was funny. I had a friend of mine read this book, finished it before I did, and she said that it just made her. She's like, immediately, I've got to get off of Facebook. I've got to get off of Meta. I've already gotten rid of it. I haven't had Facebook in a couple of years because it just isn't for me. When Blue Sky picked up again, I got off of Threads. It was like Instagram's kind of the last vestige of a Meta product that I occasionally use, but I don't think that this book pushed me as far to be like, oh, I got to get. I think there are other things that kind of struck me more prior to this book that made me want to get away from Meta. But the compounding evil, I guess, that comes through the power grabs and the manipulation of governments, the manipulation of people, and the manipulation of regulators and everything else. This book does a good job of kind of encapsulating a lot of those things, albeit could have done that a lot quicker or a lot more succinctly, but the story is sort of the point, right?
Right.
But I really, I think the ideas that we wrestle with on this podcast do have extremely real consequences in the world and extreme consequences for our own selves. And if we aren't wrestling with how to react to those beyond just talking, then, we're probably just as bad and just as complicit in the system that's doing this.
That was deep.
What's the personal ethics thing? Whatever. Like, but the whole saga here is what we've seen it play out. You said this to me offline. Like, these are the sorts of things where, like, you already know the stories. You already know what's going on. I mean, the same with the Spotify book, right? Like you've heard this stuff. You know what's going on already. These books are a way to bring those things front and center. Maybe get a wider audience, get more people to hear about it, do more education on the thing. But then when they just kind of end and leave off and like, well, what do you do next? Without any action, that's a little bit frustrating. But I think how this ties into everything else that we've been talking about on this podcast, the power dynamic in today's modern world is actually probably not much different than what the power dynamic has always been, but I think it's a lot bigger. It's at scale now, right? They've weaponized power in different ways and have figured out how to replicate it and keep it going.
I agree. And I want to add something to this because I think, and I'm pulling up my notes on this, but the difference now, there's several things that I think that are different. One, the velocity of which things can happen now is different than in the past. Friction has always existed. Velocity has always existed. Certainly could do things faster in 1960 than you could do them in 1900. But now, because of the velocity of these things, because the velocity is everywhere, it's in every experience, it's in every service, the cost of a mistake is amplified because as quickly as it is for you to be able to do something, it can be very difficult to undo the thing you did.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you can glom this onto any number of societal things right now. I'm thinking very heavily about administrative systems right now, but you could put this into anything. It's really easy to destroy Social Security. It's a hell of a job to make it, right? It took the Great Depression to make it, and they've been trying to kill it for all these years. And now when you break it, you don't even have to break it all the way, right? You could dismantle something. It's like having a plant in some dirt. If you take the plant out of the dirt, the plant will live a little while, but eventually it's going to die. Will it be in a week? I don't know. Will it be longer? I'm not sure. The plant will figure something out. And it's like you do that to every part of society. And so, yeah, these systems have always existed. People have always been in leadership and control systems and wanting to control things. I think the other thing that's really difficult, and this is the takeaway from not just Facebook, really, we're going to circle it back to Facebook here in a sense, is that things started as a way for you to connect to people you already knew. Platforms existed for you to connect to friends you already had, to maybe find people that had interests that mirrored your interests. My favorite stories of friends that I made on the internet in the early aughts, including you, but even before I met you, were born out of, I'll be very direct, a lot of my friends I made on the internet back in the early 2000s were like black people that I met on the internet. We have a podcast where we're literally my photos on it, so this would be a surprise to have the black guy on the show. But I was just like, oh, they know that? Well, yeah, I guess the picture's on there. You'll figure it out. And it was really neat to meet people that I never met before on LiveJournal. You're like, oh, we have all these cool different people with different interests, and we can talk about it and like connect about it and also connect about shared experiences. And that was the early part of the internet for me. And then it turned into other things, but all around shared interests or things you learned about, or that one weird niche game you play that only other people play, that weird niche game that you play, and you bond over that. But then it extends into other things. And now, over time, it's become people who go online to find people to sell things to, going online to find out recommendations curated from people you trust but you don't know, that you've developed a parasocial relationship with over time. You'll never meet them. They are legitimately celebrities. I have a buddy, he's like internet buddy. I've only known him from the internet. And we talk a lot. We had a conversation years ago about, he does what do you call it? What's the bike thing? Peloton. He was talking about, this is a couple of years ago when it first blew up, and we're talking about sort of the half-life of a celebrity from that. And he said one of them was on some ad, and he's like, I didn't realize her reach was that big. But I guess it makes sense that that's kind of where they are. They can transform. It's like Flo from Progressive is like $1 million actress. because she's so ubiquitous to that brand that they don't want that face anywhere else. So they pay her a lot of money to be the face of that, right? But we do this as social media with these Instagram, these different influencers on TikTok and so forth. Why the TikTok ban was so catastrophic, right? It wasn't about connecting to cool stories or ideas. It was, no, I have made this my entire profit center. And if you get rid of it, it's like closing the store. But you just close the store, you close the industry. But that's really bad when you think about how in 1990, you had neighbors, maybe you had a friend in a town over, maybe you had a pen pal. And this isn't, I'm not trying to say we should return with a V to the 1990s. Well, maybe. I'm not really, I want to go to the mall, but like, I'm not, the mall then, not the mall now. I just want to smell pretzel personally is what I need. I just need a functional candy store at the mall personally is what I need. But nonetheless, I just think that when you think about where we're headed, and this isn't really about where we are, like we're probably in good shape, but like, you don't have kids. I have a kid. Where the kids and the grandkids are going, the world they're going to live in will not resemble anything like we've seen. Whereas our great grandparents could have functioned in this world. Would it have been a little difficult to buy something? Yeah. What do you mean you don't take money, Sonny? This is good old fashioned American dollars. You know, I fought in the war for these these greenbacks, right? But they can manage it. My high school tennis coach was 96. He lived till 2017, right? Like he managed, right? I don't know if he had a cell phone. It was flip phone, right? Like, but he made it work. We will not exist in the same world. Our grandkids will not exist in that same world. And I think it's just, Facebook is just a conversation, but there's a much broader story here about what world do you want to live in?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so many things I want to say about it. Well, I think the platforming discussion is super interesting, and I don't think we should get into it here, but just to kind of tack onto that, the early aughts days of, the Web 2.0, assumption by, I think, the mass majority of people that participate in it was around connecting with people. It's about friends. It's about shared common interests. It's what the internet was created for, and then turns out that 10 years later, slightly less, the internet's actually just created as another capitalistic subjugation device. Oh, okay. And it actually wasn't created for that. I mean, maybe that's what just fascinates me so much about some of these thoughts. I hadn't really thought through the idealism into power, like the idealism into greed aspects of what this has brought up. And all these people that had very good intentions when they made a thing, I'm not including Mark Zuckerberg, but the people that pioneered the internet and the World Wide Web and those connection devices. I mean, sure, there was some military stuff behind it, but the stuff that really grew out of that was about connecting other people and letting civilization flourish, except then it was given over to people that don't want civilization to flourish. They want to strip mine it of all of its benefits, take as much cash as they can, and decimate what's there. And we're feeling the very harsh repercussions of the late stages of that capitalistic drive. And I don't know that there's a solution. It's been the hard part through some of these books is that I don't know that there's a solution, because the implicit trust that our society has in these large corporations, it's not everyone, because there's you and me and there's people that we know, but the mass number of people that are voting for populist leaders all around the world, that are happy to just use an app because it's the only thing that they know and it connects them to some version of the internet that they recognize or can see. I think the old school messaging of how good and cool and connected and social and blah 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 all this stuff is so good of a sell that people ignore, or feel maybe it's not just that they ignore it. Maybe they feel they get a pass, and don't have to recognize those other things because they're not close enough. It's the same thing. The same problems we always had. It's like, oh, well, wars in other countries, we don't have anything to do with that. Or, there's famine in other countries, and well, I might give a couple bucks, but I don't really have any personal connection to that sort of thing. Just digitized back at scale. And I don't know how to turn society around from that. If I'm completely honest, I think the cynical version of that is what you see from Facebook in this story and the stories that we read in the news and the things that have come to light and the actions that they've done. But not just Facebook is the thing. It's also all of Elon Musk's companies. It's also Microsoft in a lot of ways. It's also, I mean, honestly, even Apple, though they ostensibly try to do better, but probably aren't. It's Spotify in different ways. You know, it's
this is Joel bait, is when you say a thing that is definitely in Joel's lane. So I'm going to say a thing that is definitely Joel bait. Like, we weren't on the phone, or we weren't videotaping in front of each other, recording in front of each other right now. They could text him this and it'd still be, this is Joel bait, but so I'm saying that with knowing I'm going to tee up a thing and he's going to take it. He's going to dunk it like we're playing sports. But the things you're talking about, and I guess what I want to do is crystallize some of this for people listening. Says you think about, again, this book specifically, and you think about like our own complicity and using platforms and all of that, right? And think about this from a purely, like, the beauty of all of the stuff that's happening is I can give you like a market-based, it's not really my politics these days, but I can give you a market-based framing for why like you should care about things like ethics or like systems actually working or whatever. But what you're running into, what you're talking about in terms of people's unwillingness to call a thing what it is that we've been so radicalized by hype. The media environment is so distorted by pure lies. Like, we can't call the truth what the truth is anymore for all these reasons. There are lots of people who have incentives to make it that way. And people's unwillingness to call a thing what it is, whatever that thing is why we are in the pickle that we're in. And until folks can start to have some kind of critical lens on the media diet that you're ingesting, whether it is the funniest TikTok video you've ever seen, whether it's your favorite influencer digesting and parceling out the news for you in bite-sized ways that you understand, you know, whether it is John Oliver or somebody, right? Like, not hashtag do your own research. That's not really what I'm trying to say here. Yes, but it's not really what I mean. What I'm saying, though, is that understand that because the sources of truth are so distorted, we're living in a really weird place where people don't really understand what's happening. And it's causing us to not have the trust that we once were able to have in institutions, which leaves us where we are. And so this is going to get worse. But so it's not, I guess what I'm trying to say is you can't operate on good faith anymore, that people are going to always do the right thing, because that trust that you place in the idea that, oh, well, it'll all work out because someone else is going to solve it. I'm seeing a lot of posts on any social platform you're on now where they're like, who's going to come save us? No one.
Nobody.
Because what does save us mean in a situation? Do we agree? But I guess the last thing to say is whether it is tech bad actors, whether it is the book we're going to critique in a second, I don't want you to read, or whether it's all the things that are going on platforms right now. The reason that we're in the situation we're in my estimation, having, again, had sort of a sidecar view of the chaos happening in the country politically at the moment. And maybe I'm a sidecar. I feel like I was like, you're in a big, those 2-decker buses, and I was on the tour, and I'm in it. And I wear the vest. I work for the tour company, and I'm narrating what's going on. And because I've been there a long time, and you're a shift supervisor at the double-decker bus company, and all of a sudden now we're driving through hell. And I don't know how we showed up there. No one told me that was on the tour. And then we come out of hell and we end up taking everybody off the bus. And they leave and new people get on the bus. And every day we just go through hell again. Yep. Like, that's what I got to experience. But these are not the people that you're dealing with, the things you're reading, nothing of this is happening in good faith. And I think you have to concede that. You have to understand that you can't expect that this stuff's going to be, we're gonna get back to mean, because there is no mean, because we don't agree on what mean is. Meaning the mean, not.
Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about narcissism lately. And in a lot of different contexts, family dynamics, I think, spiritual and church type of dynamics with people that I know in different communities. But I think it goes back to everything that has been read in this book. And I think everything that you just encapsulated. The good faith argument can't be true because no one is looking out for you. No one else is looking out for you. These companies aren't looking out for their employees. They're not looking out for the world. They're looking out for their own corporate interests. Investors are looking out for their money and their futures. This is about a society that has welcomed being shaped into a pseudo society, because society means that you have to look out for someone else too. You have to keep other people that are living alongside you in mind. Otherwise, it's not a society. It's just a bunch of humans living in one spot, all working at different odds. So even in anarchist communities, they kind of like buddy up and work for each other and like take care of the people that are with them, even if they want to,
More so.
More so than I think we see today in our so-called, first world, capitalistic, golden age, whatever that we're in. But I think that's the underlying premise of Careless People. I honestly, and unfortunately, think the author kind of succumbed to some of this too. Maybe not to the extent that the leadership at Facebook did. But the fact that everything that happened is for someone else's personal gain and never for the other person that's with them means you can't have a good faith argument. All of this is done in bad faith because it is not for you. And I think the reasons that people don't give up this stuff, that they don't question the ethical side of things, is that they're entertained. And these are the same issues we've had in autocratic and fascist countries forever. It's distract the mass populace while you go do the other things for yourself, because they're happy enough to be entertained by endless TikTok videos and TV streamed to their sets, and automatic music playing on Spotify or whatever comes up, and food that can be delivered directly to them. It's about me, only me. And the occasional person that I really like, or, my partner, but really it's not even really about them. It's like they're in it with me. And so I don't want them to leave because I don't want to feel bad about them not being here. It all ends up being self-centered. And I think the only way that these things can change and progress is by us taking a step back and maybe reassessing, because when we only focus on ourselves, I mean, even from a narcissistic standpoint, that's a recipe for ruin, because no one else is taking care of you. And if no one else is taking care of you and you get to a point where you can't take care of yourself, what do you have left? When you don't have any money left to give to these large corporations, they don't care about you. You're gone. When you don't have enough money to pay your rent, you get kicked out of your apartment or your house. When you don't have enough money to get food, you don't eat and you starve. But that is the society that we live in. And so at some point, it's the reason I'm not an idealist, I'm a realist. I know this won't happen. You can't have community and society and all these things that I think we once had semblances of, and we're maybe duped then too. But there used to be some semblance, as you were saying, online of community and connecting with other people. We just don't really have that.
Speaking of food and running out of things and scarcity, we're starting a new segment called A Book We Don't Want You to Read. This was Joel's idea. It was a good idea. And the reason this came up was because Joel says, hey, Ron, should we read the book Abundance? Should we review the book Abundance? I think I cursed a lot. Pretty sure we had my car. I think there was a lot of cursing. It all came from me. And so he's like, okay, we're not going to read Abundance. We should do a segment about what book we should read sometimes. It will not be every episode feature, but it is in this one. So Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson wrote a book called Abundance. It's been getting lots of critical media praise. Unless you're on Blue Sky, everyone hates it, but that's how Blue Sky.
Everyone on Blue Sky hates us for Klein.
That's how everybody on Blue Sky hates everything, but that's how it went down. And so this book, basically the deal here is that those of you who are not read into the abundance economy, you should, or the whole sort of philosophy on abundance, you should read about it. I'm not going to get into that today. It's too long. It'd be a whole new show, and I would swear a lot, and you don't need that from me. The short version is that basically abundance is like, hey, excessive administrative burden hinders things like housing, like transportation, like energy, like scientific research. And so the idea basically is like, we should make less hindrance to these things, and therefore everything will be great. If you're like me and you're a Star Trek fan, what they propose is that if we just got rid of all the regulations, we could all live in a post-money society like on Star Trek. They don't quite say it that glibly or that idealistically, but this is the general thought. A lot of the people who critique the book basically are like, it's too simplistic. It's like low-key right-wing or a little neoliberal. I'm not going to attack it from that perspective. I'm just going to tell you that there are so many folks who spend a lot of time interrogating these kinds of topics. If you're interested in learning more about abundance or learning, well, frankly, don't. learning more. Please just avoid that entire conversation. I trying to patch societal problems at scale with really glib, easy to read, easily packaged. If we just did this, it'll all solve that. This is not a political statement, it's a statement of fact. Conservatives have spent the last 50 years trying to tell us that if we just did more austerity, that everything would be solved and that magically things would be unlocked. We've not borne witness to that anywhere in the world. Brexit in the United States, throughout the global south. We've just been cutting, and all folks do is get harmed and injured by this. So I know you don't need to read this, but these topics have been covered by folks who are much smarter than me. And if you really are interested more about these ideas broadly, you should read on those folks. And then if you want to read Abundance after that, you'll be much more informed to tackle it. Because what I would not want you to do, there are a lot of books like this right now, folks putting these things out. And this is like the first time and the only time anyone's going to review this book and talk about Ezra Klein and Steve Harvey in the same conversation. But I'm going to do it right now. And I'm going to say that, in the old days, the game show host was just the game show host, right? Bob Barker, he had other shows, but he did The Price is Right. Like, that's how we knew Bob Barker. By the way, all I ever wanted in my life to be a game show host, so this is why I'm making this metaphor, but it's true. These days, everybody wants to do 5 jobs. So Ryan Seacrest does, his American Idol. He's got this. He does Dick Clark's thing. He does the other thing. He's got a radio show. And so nobody else gets a chance to be the person to get the breakout anymore because stars can't just be good with doing 1 or 2 things. Okay, fine. Be an actor in a movie on TV and get a Tony Award. I'm cool with that. Live your best EGOT life. But Ezra Klein being Mr. Columnist guy who also gets to talk about, actually turns out I'm a political theorist. Are you though? I don't think you are. So it's a symptom of broader things going on in society. But what I would not want you to do is engage with a topic that's this dense and frankly, this multifaceted and rich and, politically complicated based on where you are, theoretically complicated based on where you live in the world. Shout out to our one Norwegian listener, right? And so, whenever I give talks about service design in Europe somewhere, I'm like, I have to recontextualize everything I'm talking about for the fact that I'm in Europe, not the United States, and that these things are different, some ways very, very significantly different. All that to say, don't engage with this book without having some foundation of what you're getting into because you're going to be disappointed. And frankly, you're going to be wooed by the siren song of the things they're talking about. You're going to read it and go, that doesn't sound so unreasonable. Why wouldn't we just give people money and build more things? That seems really easy without understanding all the constraints or that we're trying some of these things and then they're working in some places, but that progress and growth is slow. Even the most fast progress, despite what we're seeing in the world, takes a long time. Even these Doge goofballs, who I've antipathy for the rest of my life, are destroying everything. And even they are finding that destroying things takes time. No, you actually can't dismantle it all in one day. You actually have to take time to break it apart. And that frustrates them, but that's what building also is. So all that to say, don't read Abundance, you're welcome.
All right, so Careless People, I'm probably a thumbs down on it, honestly. I don't really think it's worth the read. I think there are enough people talking about it. I think we got into a lot more consequential issues that the book barely brought up and a lot deeper. I'm a thumbs down on reading it.
Yeah, I'm also a thumbs down on it. I think that the beauty of that book, some like movies where you didn't see the movie, but it's been reviewed so much and all your friends saw it that you don't really need to see it. If your library has it and you want to thumb through it, support your local library. But no, I don't think you need to buy a copy of it.
Maybe they could make The Anti-Social Network as a sequel to The Social Network.
And then you could just watch the movie of it. That'd be cool. Like you could put Zendaya in it. I don't know, right? Like that would be great. I don't think you need to read this book. I think you can. Frankly, folks have gotten more in depth, obviously, than we did. We went somewhere else. We intended to go somewhere else with this because that's our show. But you can totally get enough content on this.
If you want to interact with us at all on the topic of this book, you can find us on Blue Sky at futureperfectbook.club. You can also go to futureperfectbook.club on the internet to listen to past episodes and find transcripts. For our next book, we're going to the mall, Ron Bronson.
Finally. All I wanted was a pretzel. Can't eat the pretzel, but I want it. We're going to read Meet Me by the Fountain, An Inside History of the Mall by Alexandra Lang. Very excited to read this book. Came out in 2022. This was supposed to be the pick-me-up book. This is supposed to be the book that's fun. It's not fun because the mall's dead, right? But I'm looking forward to talking about it. this is a book you definitely get at your library. And I look forward to talking with you all about it, and also to have a little bit of Mulvis talk.
Yeah. And remember, you can read along, like, you've got a week or two before that episode comes out. So if you want to prep, get the book, read it, come back and talk to us, ask us questions on Blue Sky or whatever. But if not, come back and listen.